Welcome back to Hear Me Out Sports, where we will be reviewing Week 6, and then we will be going through Week 7. Stick with us as we review that bad week. Let's run it. All right, so we're here in Week 6, where we have 51.61%. Not very good and not excited about that. So I got to do my due diligence, and I got to pay out because of that. I led you astray this week. It was hard to predict. If you look at some of those people, let's look at them right now. Hits, we had Mo Ali Cox. We said to sit him, and it worked out. Tyler Conklin, we also said sit him. And just under the Wilson regime, he is not a big factor. Some of the misses, though. George Kittle, he broke. It wasn't by much. It was by about 2 points, so still a good showing by him, but he broke. Robert Tonyan, he broke, and Mike Gesicki, he absolutely destroyed that threshold. Guys who aren't very consistent doing it in the past. Some of those close calls, all of which made us drop in percentage. Those were all misses. But Kyle Pitts was at like 10.9. Irv Smith, again, around that same bit, and Noah Fant as well. So, listen, sometimes you're just going to be off, and that's on me. We're going to now cover Week 7 buys, though, and get us started so that we can actually have successful Week 7. Some of the buys here, we got Buffalo Bills. We got Dawson Knox sitting for them. For the Rams, Higbee is sitting. For the Vikings, Irv Smith, he's out. And Eagles, got Dallas Goedert out. So if you have any of these guys, I don't think it's going to be a huge hit unless you have Tyler Higbee or Dallas Goedert. The other two are inconsistent, so I don't think you'd probably be relying on them per se. But I guess it still can't hurt you because they're not terrible tight ends. With that, we're going to jump into Week 1. New Orleans Saints versus the Arizona Cardinals. I started Taysom Hill last week, and I just can never really start him because the inconsistency. It's too unpredictable. Sometimes he busts it off and has 3-4 touchdowns and has a heyday, but most times he doesn't. So because most times he doesn't have that 10-plus point game in PPR leagues, I'm going to keep him sat. Juwan Johnson, he just can't get any love there either. So the upside is that the Arizona defense is kind of average. And, New Orleans is down on some targets due to injury with their receiver core. So that gives Taysom Hill the potential to be used more in that offense. But it is a quick turnaround, meaning that those guys will probably be out in this Week 7. Use that information as you will. If you want to play Taysom Hill, it is still risky, but because there's less targets, he could see some love. Arizona Cardinals, I do like Zach Ertz. He's still 100% on the year. He's led in targets, catches, and yards in Week 6, which is exactly what we want to see from tight end. Him being used in a very pivotal position there. We'll move on, going over to Cincinnati, where we got the Falcons versus the Bengals. Kyle Pitts, again, too inconsistent, and he's not averaging that high on the season. He barely broke in Week 6, our fringe, so we did miss him, but it was by less than a point, if I remember right, or maybe just over a point. He had 3 targets for only 19 yards, but it just so happened that one of those was a touchdown. So that was, again, big play. It's going to get him points, and I think Atlanta's just more run-focused. They're just not passing it to him. Cincinnati, on the other hand, I do like Hayden Hurst despite him not having a good Week 6. He is a fringe, though. I think that because Atlanta Falcons have a poor tight end defense, allowing 13.7 points per game, that he is going to be someone I want to look at. But, he could still be returning from injury, which they got. I don't know. It's a risky start, but we'll see. Moving on now to the return of the Detroit Lions versus the Dallas Cowboys, where we got TJ Hawkinson. He's in the sit column. I am going to say he's a fringe. Dallas has a pretty stout defense, and they only allow 5.9 points per game. And the Lions are returning to full strength. They're going to have DeAndre Swift back. They're going to have a fully healthy Amon-Ra St. Brown. And some of the injury concerns they had in previous weeks where TJ Hawkinson was a very big factor, they're just not going to be there anymore. And let's face it, Detroit Lions, they are a very run productive team. They don't focus on the run as much as they probably should, but if they see where their production's coming from, they'd probably run the ball more. On the Dallas Cowboys side, I was very split about this. You got Jake Ferguson and Dalton Schultz. The reason I have Dalton Schultz in the sit column and his backup, Jake Ferguson in the start, is because if Dalton Schultz is in there, I think they're going to be splitting time, and I think that they'll both suffer from that. If Jake Ferguson is in there and Dalton Schultz is still out on injury, then I think Jake Ferguson will get the majority of targets. And so if he is a sole tight end there, that's the stipulation right there. If he's a sole tight end, then he's in the start column for me, especially against this Detroit defense, who's number 26 on the year against tight ends, giving up over 12 points per game. And hey, it could be high scoring depending on what Detroit Lions we see. So we'll move on from there to Tennessee Titans versus the Indianapolis Colts. I like Kylan Granson. He has had some decent games, and Tennessee gives up a decent amount of points as well. Indianapolis seems to be turning more to a fast tempo, quick pass offense. So because of that, I do like Kylan Granson, but I don't think anyone else is going to be getting too many targets from the tight end side. For Tennessee, Geoff Swaim, he has 2 games with 0 points. That's not what you want. That's not the confidence you need. And his pass, he's passed the threshold once. That was 10.9 points. Not very impressive to pass that threshold. So I've kind of given up on him. But let's keep in mind that Indianapolis gives up over 12 points to opposing tight ends, and that might be something that is worth looking into. Now we're going to head over to Washington, where we got the Packers versus the Commanders, where we got Robert Tonyan. He had a very good Week 6, and I really wanted to start him, but he's a fringe for me. Only because, so let's cover his good first. Good Week 6. He had 12 targets for 10 catches. He had 10 catches for 90 yards, but it was a struggling offense. So I think they kind of have to go to him. Aaron Rodgers just isn't super high and keen on some of these receivers, but I think because Washington has a very good defense, allowing barely over 5 points per game, I think that could throw a wrench into that production. And I hope that the Green Bay Packers can figure out their offense a little bit more. So that means that they're going to be hitting some of these receivers and maybe even the backs more as well. On Washington's side, Logan Thomas, I'm a little bit worried about the injury. So if he does come back, I don't think he'll be at full strength, and they probably won't give him too many looks. On Green Bay's side as well, you got John Bates. Green Bay's side, the defense is number 3 against the tight end. So John Bates and Logan Thomas aren't going to be able to impress too much, and the Washington Commanders have kind of taken a step back. Now, with the injury to their quarterback, you got Taylor Heineke, so who knows, that could make production go up, but Taylor Heineke can sometimes run, so that's something to keep our eye on. Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus Carolina Panthers. Cade Otton. So, first off, Brait went out last week with an injury. Hope he can heal up all right. Cade Otton, he has had a decent game before in this season, but I think the Panthers are going to give him more of an issue, and I think that he's just going to need more targets or bigger plays, and so I haven't been convinced yet. Carolina, they're a trash team. He's a trash tight end. He's 0% on the year for breaking that threshold, and his highest was in Week 1. It's only gone downhill since then, and that was only 7.3 points. So not a confident start there. We're going to keep him in the bench column. Let's head over to Jacksonville, where we got the Giants versus the Jaguars. Daniel Bellinger, I really liked him this last week. He's a fringe this week. Listen, he's had a good last 2 weeks. Let's give him that. Came more from touchdowns in both those weeks, and not so much production or volume. And now he's going against a decent Jacksonville defense, so I'm a little bit concerned. He is a fringe, like I said. I just don't expect him to break those 10 points. Jacksonville, on the other hand, they have decent efficiency. He has had decent efficiency in the last couple weeks, Evan Ingram. And the Giants, they give up over 11 points per game, and it's his former team, so that could be a little X-factor bonus there. They could be wanting to stick it to him. So Evan Ingram, I want to see what he can do there. I want to see him stick it to his old team. And for the Jacksonville Jaguars to get it back on track like they had in the first couple weeks of the season. Heading over to the Browns now, where we got David Njoku. Last 4 weeks, he's been pretty decent with 29 targets total over those 4 weeks. He was only 3 for 6 in Week 6, but he still ended with 8.8 points. I need him to catch more of those balls, and then he'll be able to pass that threshold pretty easily. And I also think that this is going to be a game where the Browns are going to have to rely more on passing, as I believe the Ravens will get an early lead and probably keep that lead. So I've got him in the start column. Baltimore, no-brainer. He's averaging 19.13 points. Mark Andrews is an absolute beast. He's only being beat out right now by one other person. We'll cover that soon. Now we got the Jets versus the Broncos. Tyler Conklin. As I mentioned earlier, under the Wilson regime, it's not very pretty to see. He's kind of not really getting the same looks or targets or anything that he used to be getting. He's had 8 passes in the last 3 weeks under Wilson, and he's only caught 4 of those. So I'm not super high on him anymore. We'll see if Wilson can change my mind about that. But as of now, until I see more targets going his way, Tyler Conklin's going to be a sit. On the Denver Broncos side, don't know how to pronounce his last name, but Greg over there. He's kind of a fringe for me because he had a good debut, but it was very big play dependent. He only had a couple of receptions, and it just so happened that one was for a touchdown, and he ended with 44 yards. So, some big plays out of those 2 receptions, high efficiency, and he's going to have a good matchup against the Jets. But I think that I got to see it more. That debut is only a debut. Maybe it was beginner's luck. As for Saubert, he's 0% on the season, so he's also going to be a sit. Heading over now to Houston Texans versus the Las Vegas Raiders, where we got O.J. Howard and Jordan Akins, both on the bench column. They're fringe, though, because Las Vegas, they have a terrible defense against tight end, giving up over 15 points per game, which is ridiculous. But the last 4 games have not been good, and they're kind of playing a little bit of a split tight end there. And that, again, as I mentioned earlier, especially against the Seattle Seahawks, that leads to just, eating out of each other's bowls. Las Vegas Raiders, though, Darren Waller, I really wanted to start. I know he's capable. He's broken the threshold 2 of 5 weeks, but he is dealing with injury, and the last few weeks have just been a little bit unimpressive, so I've got him in the sit column. Seattle Seahawks now. This is the team I was talking about. 3 tight ends who actually all get looks. That's just not enough for me. On any given week, it's only likely that one of those 3 will ever break the threshold. And for last week specifically, Fant was the only one who made it, and he barely made it. So not very high on their tight ends, all chipping in to, I guess, eat out of each other's points. Very low ceilings and very low floors as well. Gerald Everett, on the other hand, I got in the start column. He kind of let down in that last week. He had a couple passes go his way, or should have gone his way, that would have raised his points higher. I still don't think he would have broken those 10 points, but he would have been dang close. So I've got him to start column against the Seahawks defense, though. Now let's head over to San Francisco, where we got the Chiefs versus the 49ers. Travis Kelce, this is the guy I was talking about earlier, who's just absolutely killing it. He averages 21.83 points per game. And with that said, I don't think I need to advocate for him anymore. George Kittle, he has been coming around. He's proving that he's his old self. Kansas City allows 10.9 points per game, so that means that he still has potential to do well. He had 10 targets in week 6, meaning I hope that Jimmy G can keep feeding the ball to George Kittle. But he still is being used as a blocker, so keep that in mind. I think he'll break those 10 points, but he's not going to be getting you 20-plus points, I don't think. Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Miami Dolphins. If Pat can return from his concussion protocol, I'm going to stick him in. He's been averaging 9.9 points per game, and 3 of the 5 weeks he's been able to break that threshold. But let's keep in mind that one of those weeks that he didn't, one of those 2 weeks, it's because he came out early from that concussion. And any other option, I think it's just not great there in Pittsburgh. As for Miami, Mike Gesicki, he's shown us that he has a decent ceiling, but he's only 2 for 6 as far as breaking the threshold. And with Tua coming back under center, I don't know if he's going to still get those same looks, but he is coming off of that huge week 6, like we said, with 24.9 points. But that came because they were playing that whole pass-heavy, come back from a deficit type of scheme for the entire game. So I think that that's unlikely to be repeated in this next week. Here we got Cole Kmet, again, 0% on the season for breaking that threshold, and Fields is possibly out, so not confident there. New England Patriots, Hunter Henry had a good week 6, and Jonas Smith also did, even though he didn't break the threshold. Both these guys are splitting, though. I think that makes them suffer, as I mentioned earlier. but they're also facing a decent tight end defense, and I believe if they can get up, that they'll start killing the time with that run game. Ramondre Stevenson seems to be doing all right. Now that rounds us out. We're going to finish up there. Again, through these bye weeks and through these injuries, it's kind of hard to tell who to start, especially if you have no other options. But some of those people you might want to pick up if you don't have anyone. Look at Hunter Henry and Jonas Smith, like I mentioned. Mike Gesicki, he's kind of a big bet. Taysom Hill is another big bet. No guarantee that they'll actually do well. And I'm kind of looking through my list and seeing if there's anyone else who I would recommend picking up who might not already be picked up. Greg Dulcich from the Broncos, if he has a good game again and breaks that threshold again, maybe. Daniel Bellinger, I'm looking at picking him up in one of my leagues, and I don't think there's much else that I can advocate for there. But with that being said, we're going to round it out and say, hey, like, follow, subscribe, especially comment. Like I said, I kind of blew it this week, so I'm going to be paying out money, but I look at comments first. So if there's people commenting, they're probably the most likely to actually get the money. And if there's, I'll also look at the likes, I'll also look at the subscribers. So do all those things, and we will catch you next week when we cover Week 8 tight ends, and I will also be giving you the Week 7 quarterbacks. So catch us on Thursday for that, and we will see you Thursday.